You are listening to the Wonder of Parenting podcast, a brain science approach to parenting. My name is Tim Wright, along with Dr. Michael Gurry. Michael, this is episode number 342. Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
Yeah.
I still remember when you said,
Yep.
Michael, we should do a podcast.
Yeah.
What is that, 6 years ago?
Yep. And here we are. And we're celebrating 342, which I don't know why that's a big number, but we've got a special guest with us today. And we're going to bring him on in just a moment. We're going to talk about how to raise your kids and get them ready for adulting. And which is a word that Michael and I had never heard before until our kids came along and became adults. And then they were adulting or trying to. And so we're going to figure all that out with our guest here in just a moment. First of all, a shout out to our sponsors. We are grateful for Man Cave and our good friend, Dr. Marion Hill down here in Phoenix. And Man Cave provides nurturing programming, one-on-one or group mentoring for fathers, male role models to help them navigate the challenges of healthy masculinity, parenthood, and to build strong, healthy relationships. They empower men to be positive role models and active participants in their children's lives, creating stronger, more resilient families and communities. That's Man Cave, and you can learn more about them on wonderparenting.com. And then also our newest sponsor, and that's the Army and Navy Academy. Boys and Girls Learn Differently. Michael's written a book by that same name. It's Science. And Army and Navy Academy, in partnership with the Gurry Institute, tailors education to how boys learn best through hands-on experiences, structured mentorship, engaging academics, and real-world skill development. As an all-boys military boarding school on the Pacific Ocean in Carlsbad, California, they create an environment where boys focus, connect, and thrive. So discover how they unlock each boy's potential and develop them into virtuous young men. You can go to armyandnavyacademy.org. That's armyandnavyacademy.org. So today we've got a special guest with us. He's got a new book out called Raising Future Adults. And we both thought, wow, that's a great topic. So we've got Dave Krasky with us today. Dave, welcome to the Wonder Parenting Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me today, guys.
So Dave, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm a licensed school psychologist in South Florida. I work in private practice, and I've been working for about 20 years now with kids, teens, families, parents. I have a lot of experience in the schools as well, but primarily the main focus and the main part of my job is assessment and treatment, with the whole idea, which is what kind of led to this book, of preparing our kids to succeed for the future, no matter what things get in their way or what obstacles they have to overcome. That's kind of our job.
Wow. So now, do you have kids yourself?
I do. I have 2 kids. So I'm right in the middle of that tween teenage years. So not only have I learned a lot from the families I've worked with for years, I learned a bunch from my own kids. And they're living your very typical, I guess they're Gen Z. Is that this new generation now?
I've lost count.
So just, and I myself just kind of bad. Like, I'm very Gen X, latchkey kid, stayed out of the house till dark every night, right? The old days, like, getting screamed at to come in for dinner. That was a lot of my experience, and what kind of also fostered the book itself, and the idea of what's the kind of goal with when we're thinking getting our kids ready for the future, and what are things that they're not getting as much as what previous generations got that are still kind of necessary.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So before we get into that, because I think that's going to be a really interesting conversation, and maybe this phrase adulting came in, I don't remember it being a Gen X term, more millennials, but maybe it was Gen X. From your experience, what is it, the word adulting, what is it trying to capture? I see a lot of t-shirts that talk about how hard adulting is, or I'm an adult and I don't want to be adulting. Give us a little bit about what that means, because I think your book is trying to counter some of that.
So a lot of the young adults I work with and the teens, they mention it. And then we've kind of got this working definition of the adulting to them is the consequences of their action or inaction have greater repercussions. So when you're 12, if you make a mistake, you're not going to lose your home. You're not going to get fired, anything like that. A lot of the worry and concern is, oh my gosh, now I have this responsibility, I have this pressure on me to keep my job, to pay the mortgage, to perform, to do well. And if I don't, there's going to be such severe consequences, where a lot of them are pretty exaggerated of what they would actually be.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the young adults I work with right now, and there's a lot of the 18 to 25-year-olds I have right now, right in the middle of that. Oh my gosh, I'm so scared to become an adult because then I'll have to blank.
Huh.
Where when we were younger, we just kind of figured like, we'll figure it out. Like I have 3 right now that I work with that they're scared about just doing taxes. Right. And I'm like, most of us adults, like we just hire accountants. We're not filling out, 1098s on our own and all these other forms. Like, and nobody really teaches a lot of and then I ask them like, well, didn't your parents talk to you about this, or didn't you learn some of this? And a lot of their focus for this generation, at least down by me, what I'm finding is so much focus is just on grades, academia, after school activities. A lot is lost when it comes to just your kind of common sense, if you want to call it, adulting behaviors, so that they can be independent and functional.
So is it sort of a matter of they don't feel like they're being prepared for adulthood? Is it a matter of thinking, man, I don't want to live with that kind of pressure, I like being a kid? Is it a combination of both? When I was a kid, I could hardly wait to be an adult.
Right.
Get my car, get out of the house, all that kind of stuff.
It's funny. I follow a lot of Jonathan Haidt, the social psychologist, right? Anxious Generation. And it resonated with me because I see it firsthand with the kids I work with and teens I work with. And a lot of them use these new terms that they like, adulting, that they find on TikTok and other things. So a lot of them kind of say in one way or another, I miss being a kid because from age 12 to 20 something, I wasn't really allowed to be anymore. Huh. There was not this free play and just hang out at the mall and drive around and go to the beach. So many of these kids have so much pressure on when it comes to the scheduled activities, sports, after school activities and organizations, the grades, the tutoring, the SAT, and the standardized tests, that they almost feel like they missed out. And then there's a little bit of that regret. And like, now I have to work 40 years and that's going to be miserable. And they have this preconceived notion of, well, being an adult or adulting is going to be terrible. And then I love to ask, like, well, what does that like practically mean? Like, you wake up in the morning, you're my age. After, obviously, you have to run to the bathroom because like your bladder's not the same when like you're in your 40s versus your 20s. But what do you think the day is?
Yeah.
And they don't have a very concrete grasp on what it looks like and what they can do, that they focus so much on what they're going to miss out of or what they're forced to do.
Yeah. I would just say once you hit your 60s, you're probably in the bathroom more during the night than you are during the day. I don't know why that is.
Yeah.
Something happens and all of a sudden you wake up one morning and you say, I've been up 16 times to go to the bathroom and I didn't even drink anything. So, Michael, I know what he just said resonates with you a lot, right? What are some of the things that you heard that you want to tease out?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Thanks for saying these things, Dave. It's all so true. At every level, even like kids not doing chores. Just minute things. The move or the wave that we've had the last 20 years or so, where the kids are like, they're not doing chores. We want them to have a childhood or whatever, and so we're doing everything. Well, but they should do chores. It's a way that they are modeling, right? What's it gonna be as an adult? Well, they're gonna have to, mow the lawn. Yep. They're gonna have to take out the garbage. I mean, whatever it is, the 1,000 things that we want them to be doing every day, we want them to be doing those because it prepares them for adulthood. And then your point about free play, switching gears, the free play thing is just so crucial. It's so crucial for brain development. And, Tim knows on this show, Dave, we argue, look, just have them in one, big social emotional activity, right. One academic, and one physical, like a sport. They don't have to be in 20. Right? Because part of what we're trying to do is get people to your point, get them to be allowed to have free play, be allowed to go do things that are independent, that are not planned. And again, right? that helps train them for adulthood. They're doing things independently. Not everything is prepared and structured for them. And they have to actually, in free play, develop their own rules, right? To some extent, that's what an adult conscience is. So I totally resonate with everything you're saying. Thank you.
And it's interesting, you mentioned those three facets. A lot of what I talk about in the book, it's very practical, but it talks a lot about balance, where, there's pendulum swings. When you work long enough and you look at the research and the trends of children development, families, parenting, it shifts. So sure, there was probably not enough supervision at one point. And then they realized through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, like, okay, we maybe need to shift a little more. But then you have all these new terms like helicopter parenting and Apache parenting, which is like the Apache helicopter, which is even more intense if you've heard of that one, where what you mentioned, it's getting to really the root of what's going on. Is these are children that are eventually going to be adults functioning in a social environment. The majority of them, they're going to have to interact. They're going to have to develop great executive skills and problem solving skills, and be able to communicate with one another and use all these things that if they don't get practice doing it, to expect them to just turn it on when they're 18 or 22 or 25, it's not realistic.
Yep. So Dave, we're going to come back and then we're going to dive into the book, because you've got some really, really interesting insights. We've sort of talked about the problem, but the goal for every parent is to raise their kids to be good, productive, healthy, responsible adults. Mm-hmm. And that's the focus of your book. We're going to be back with you in just a moment. You're listening to the Wonder Parenting Podcast, a brain science approach to parenting. Dave, one of the things that you say in your book, and you hinted at this a little bit, is that the needs of children haven't changed.
Right.
But there are things around them that have changed dramatically, really, since I was a kid. I mean, some of these things are obvious, but talk a little bit about, you're Gen Z, and now you're raising kids who come out of the womb with a very different worldview. So talk about that point. Needs of kids haven't changed, but the world has changed.
So I always remind parents, your children's brains physiologically look the same as yours did, right? Yours did at that age. Same areas, and they need the same things. So what has changed, though, is the technology piece is one of the things that they keep pointing to over and over. And now that we have some studies, I think it's about the 20-year anniversary of a smartphone right around now. So they're starting to do some longitudinal studies now where they're looking at, all right, like unchecked technology use. How did that work out? During the pandemic was another time when they were able to kind of have this large scale study, and even seeing it anecdotally, like in practice with kids, the ones who succeed, the ones who are emotionally, socially healthy, well-developed versus the ones that are not, are the ones that are getting those things that they need. So what do they need? You mentioned what's changed. The things that happen is they need connections with others. And it doesn't mean that your child has to be the class president or the extrovert or anything, but there needs to be some kind of connectivity. There needs to be some kind of physical, and you mentioned this earlier, some kind of physical demand or task, running around, playing tag, swimming, whatever it is. And they need some kind of sense of purpose that doesn't just have to do with school and grades. And part of that is independence. So the things that have changed, and you see it now, technology is baked into the culture, even in academia, where most schools, public or private, kids are on screens a good amount of the school day. And they're not interacting as much. And they're not even the basics of being able to learn how to read social cues and voice tone. I joke with a lot of the parents. It seems like the last 5 years, I've been like a couples counselor for teenagers, where they come in and they're asking me, what does this mean? And they show me a text on their phone. And my first thing is like, I don't know. I can't hear their voice. I don't know if they're being sarcastic. I don't know if this is like, I don't know. Like, well, what should I do? You should stop texting and call them. Or better yet, you should show up to their house and hang out in the driveway for a few hours and talk. and there might be yelling and crying and screaming and hugging, whatever. But those skills, like Dr. Michael was kind of saying, because they didn't get chances to practice those for years, and then when they're confronted with this scary endeavor of, oh my gosh, like there's a little discourse here, they don't know what to do. So
Wow.
a lot of those things early on, the letting them play and figure it out, the chores, which I love, because it forces children, first it gives them structure and responsibility, but it also kind of forces them to manage their time and their output, and to realize like, oh, like you have to work before you play, and you have to kind of earn things in society and culture.
So David,
Yep.
we have, sorry, I should call you Dave. You're not in trouble.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Michael and I have done several podcasts, as our listeners know, on social media. You know, certainly there are some real blessings to it, but there's some real challenges. And I think you've articulated something that's really helpful to hear. You've said it in kind of a different way, that a teenager is coming to you with a text asking you, what does this mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's a very, very interesting thought for a guy who's my age. And I realize that I can read texts, and because they're just words, you don't know, were they joking? Were they being serious? This whole thing of the social cues and communicating and understanding the emotions behind the words and the intent behind the words. Are you seeing with the work you're doing now with kids, is that becoming increasingly a challenge?
That, and what that also then eventually ends up with, is increased anxiety.
Yeah.
Because now you have these kids, teenagers, that are confused, unsure. They're reading things, either over-interpreting or under-interpreting things, and it creates stress. And then what happens with stress, right? The emotional regulation system of your brain, things are firing that shouldn't be. It's hard to be rational and use critical thinking and traditional problem solving and communication. So then you get, you know, for lack of a better term, like this mess that they can't navigate. They don't know what to do. And then you have I kind of break it into two groups. You have your avoiders and your confronters. The avoider is just like, I'm just going to ignore it. I'm not going to talk to them ever again. The confronters, sometimes it gets too aggressive. And then that leads to a whole other area that becomes difficult. So quick story, just because I'm here in North Jersey, and I spent the day yesterday in New York City with my daughter and her best friend, you know, riding the subways, walking around. And there was a lot of teens and field trips and buses. And even just waiting for the subway, if you look around, about 80 to 90% of people are on a phone. Where I was just thinking, like, before we did this, sure, like people were maybe reading their newspaper.
Right.
And most people were just looking around and observing, right? Just looking at people's faces, looking at people's mannerisms and nonverbals, and kind of reading the room.
Mm-hmm.
Or I do wonder, like, because there's a lack of that option for children when the screen is put in front of them, or the technology piece is put in front of them, how much are they not developing in those years that when they're older, that part of their brain is really formed well?
Yeah. Boy, that's I'm going to have Michael comment on that, but we live close to Disneyland, so we're like a 6-hour drive. It's amazing to me, the last few years I've gone, people walking through Disneyland with their faces in their phones.
Mm-hmm.
Now, part of that is because Disney has created the Disney World or Disneyland experience to be accessed through your phone. You can set your rides up and so on through your phone. You order your meals through your phones. But people are walking up and down Main Street, and they're just missing the joy of the experience because they're in their phones.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael, to Dave's point about, you know, what are we losing in the brain as our kids become adults? That was a really good insight for him.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, let's go to our break, and then let me.
Okay, you want to? Okay,
bit.
let's do that.
Yeah.
That's good. All right. So you're listening to the Wonder Parenting Podcast, a brain science approach to parenting, and Michael needs this commercial break to come up with his answer. We'll be back with you in just a moment. All right, Michael, you've had a chance now to come up with your answer, so this better be good.
And I still have nothing. No.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you're saying what you're saying, Dave. And yes, especially to the point about the brain and anxiety, as you know, Dave, it can't help but loop And when it loops, it's looping between attention parts of the brain and the amygdala and some emotive parts of the brain, and it's not able to move up. And then you said before about executive decision making. So that's what's happening as people are so overly connected, and they're doing it via text, and they're not going and meeting in the driveway, like you said, right? They're not talking. They're trying to do it via text, or they're constantly on TikTok or Instagram, or however it manifests. Or by the way, they're spending their 6-hour day on screens at school.
Mm-hmm.
All of that is the screen time that adds up to the brain that, as you said, started out the same way a brain started out, in infancy 1,000 years ago. It needs the same things. It started out the same way, but now it's being invaded, and it's being poisoned to some extent. And the way that's working is by creating these loops that can't move up to executive decision making. And at a certain point, it is logical that people are going to, as you said, avoid or aggress, right? And logical that a lot are going to avoid. And as they get more anxious, right? Mm-hmm. We call it social anxiety disorder. They're going to avoid more. Right. And so then that's a vicious cycle. And if they confront, it's often overreaction, right? Because they've misinterpreted. And then that relationship gets ruined. Let's say, and it would have been a good relationship to have in their lives, but it gets ruined. And so the screen world, for anyone listening, right? Yeah, we've done a lot of programs on it, supporting what Dave's saying, because that world it has invaded brain development, and I think people have to look at it that way. And you said something, Dave, early before the first break. You said the word practice, and you're so right. Childhood is actually practice for adulthood.
Yep.
Right. Childhood is actually practice for adulthood. And even free play. You are practicing things like problem solving and all these other things that are practice for adulthood. It would be great if people could see it that way again. And then I think they would maybe protect their kids from screens and all of this, because they would realize, well, if childhood is practice for adulthood, I actually don't want my kid's adulthood to be 12 hours on a screen.
Yeah, it's very good. And I love that idea. Practice for adulthood. You have another, again, the book is called Raising Future Adults, Dave Krasky, Krasky. Dave, and it's available on all the book platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I found interesting in your book was shifting the mindset of parents from directors to teachers.
Yes.
From directors to teachers. Now, I hear director, and I'm thinking of a casting, the director of a movie. You're directing them through the play, and maybe that's what you had in mind. But talk about that, the difference between a director and a teacher. It's a great insight.
I think this shift really comes with the idea that a director just does that, right? He directs, like, you do what I say. Okay. Like, I'm directing this task, whether you're managing an administrator or whatnot. When you're teaching, it also, what makes it easier is then you're not expecting perfection. So like Michael was saying before, the term practice, when parents come in and their child's dysregulated and having meltdown, whatever, and the parent wants to rescue or, oh, don't cry or make it okay. So, oh, no. Like, this is good. They're now getting to practice self-soothing or self-calming. Like, we're here to teach them. This is right. We're the teachers. That's our role. Whether it's teaching them how to ride a bike, but we can also teach them how to communicate what they need when necessary. We could teach them how to self-soothe and regulate their own emotions, because that's our job. It's not to make them feel better. It's to give them the tools that they could do it themselves, so that when they're on their own one day. And I always think of myself, like, when people ask what I do, like, technically I'm a preventionist, because the whole basis of this book, it's preventing. I don't want once I get a 25-year-old who's been in and out of rehab for 8 years, we're not preventing anymore. We're reacting. And now it's a little more difficult. We're dealing with all these other factors. But if you bring me the 5-year-old, if I get to work with the 10-year-old, the new parents, all of these skills can prevent so many things later in life that most parents don't think of. They don't think of like, oh, just giving him the iPad whenever he's upset, that, you know, what can that do in the future? Like, it's not going to lead to like anything catastrophic. You know, he'll be fine.
Right.
Where that's when I usually kind of, you know, pause them and gently kind of remind them like, well, if you really think of it that way, take away the screen and anything else unhealthy, which would be like, well, it's just a couple cigarettes a day. You know, he's
Yeah.
fine. He'll grow out of it.
Yeah.
Or, you know, a little bit of heroin, like whatever. And that they have the same reaction, like, oh, well, no, I wouldn't do that. I'm like, this is health. And by shifting yourself as the teacher too, when a lot of these parents, and the reason why I think the helicopter parenting has gotten so extreme, you know, part of it's the social media, the news, everything, you know, is scary, where I have to remind families all the time, like, actually, according to the data, it's a lot safer now than like 100 years ago.
Right.
So if you think of yourself as a teacher, you're not going to swoop in as much, because a teacher's perspective is it's the student's job to learn, not for me to do. That's what a good teacher does. And if they don't get it the first time, that's okay. I just need to reteach it. Teachers don't look at themselves as failures if all the kids, you know, not everybody learns algebra. They'll say, you know what, we just need some more practice in algebra. We'll do a couple more lessons, then we'll take another quiz.
So what's fascinating to me is a director, as you've described it, doesn't really seem to take into account the individual gifts and strengths and personality and nature of the child. It's just sort of a cookie cutter approach to life, where, Michael, you've been so good in your book, Nurture the Nature and so on, and saying we need to understand the nature of our kids. And that's why teachers are going to be far better than directors.
Yeah, just adding that language, Dave, you said it so beautifully. I love that. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. That's I think for me as a parent, that's what I was really more. I was more a teacher, and it allowed all the things you're talking about. And just one other thing I would add to it is that as a teacher too, I think, tell me if you agree or disagree with it. As a teacher, my method in parenting I didn't think it was my job to make my kids feel better. You know, it was more my job to help direct their feelings. And so I had to listen to them and understand what they were feeling, no doubt. And I'm a therapist, and so I can do that. But I had, I think, more a teacher approach like you're describing, which is, okay, all right, you've had those feelings. Now I'm gonna teach you what to do with those,
right.
You know, and then you as an independent individual will have your own executive functioning and your own directing of your emotions. And so it's not really my job to tell you what to feel. And it's not really my job to always make you feel better. And maybe in your metaphor, I don't know, tell me if I got it wrong, but the director is probably telling the actor what to feel.
Right.
Whereas the teacher. So anyway, does that make sense?
Yes. And even to add to that, and I remind parents too, not only are we teaching by, you know, direct teaching, but we're also modeling. Yep. And, right. You know, how many families, you know, do you guys go out and see where everyone at the restaurant's on their phone, including the parents? It's not just the kids. Or the parent reacts a certain way, but if their kid reacts a similar way, they get upset at the kid. Or I say, well, no, you as the adult, you can say, you know what? I'm frustrated. I want to take some space before I start screaming. So I need a minute. And a lot of what I end up doing, it's not just with the kids, teens, and, you know, young adults. It's with the parents and the families as well, because it's a dynamic, right? Like, you're all living together, you're existing together. And if these things are modeled and taught, then you've got a really good recipe to succeed. So I try to phrase a lot in the book too as not like what's wrong, but what can work, and looking more. And again, like as teachers, because my background when I was in grad school, I was teaching for years also. And my wife's a special ed teacher, everyone in my family's education. So we have that mindset also as, you know, the whole I do, we do, you do. Right. That's what they say in the classroom. That's how things are going to be taught. And like Michael is saying, to be able to tell them like, yeah, okay, this is how you're feeling. You know, it's not okay. And I say this with some of the kids who have more severe emotions and behaviors. You know, you can feel upset. It's not okay to cut, but it's okay to cry. And then I remind the parent that, because the parent for years is telling the kid, don't cry. Don't be upset. Don't cry. And then I'm like, what's wrong with crying? Like, crying's fine. I don't want you to hurt yourself. But if you need to cry, you cry. If you need to talk to someone, you ask. If you need some time alone, you can tell us. And we as the adults, we will leave you alone.
And all of that, of course, is in the service of helping our kids grow up to be responsible, healthy adults.
That's it.
And so tell us again the name of the book.
So it's called, I even brought a little copy. It's called Raising Future Adults.
And where can people find it?
You could find it on Amazon. You could find it on barnesandnoble.com. It's on Goodreads and other online retailers. It's very easy to read. I made it specifically without all the jargon that we're used to hearing all the time from a lot of professionals, which I think they're great and they're knowledgeable, but they forget sometimes not everybody read all these books and, went to these higher level schools where this is practical. Like, this is the real world. And especially like our society where, you have both parents are working in most homes.
Yep.
So this is what it looks like practically. The majority of kids are in school a good amount of the day. And the ones that are pretty bright are told to take the advanced classes and go to college. So it's really for those families and those real life parents in situations where they can read through the book, look at different topics, because it's broken into over 50 different topics on different fields, and a couple of easy things to do for each one to start small. Because even us as parents, it could be overwhelming. Where do you start? What should I prioritize? So that was part of the book too, because if the goal is always in the back of your head of, well, what do I have to make sure they could do on their own when they're on their own?
Yes.
It always makes it a little bit easier. And then you won't get as dysregulated yourself thinking, okay, you know what? I know this is the right thing because this will help them survive in the world.
So every parent wants to raise their kids to be healthy adults. And so every parent's going to want to get Dave's book, Raising Healthy Adults, Dave Krasky, available on Amazon. Dave, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it. Good stuff.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks everyone for listening.
Awesome.
Go to Facebook, look up Wonder Parenting. Join us there, wonderparenting.com. We'll be back with you next time. I'm Tim Wright, along with Dr. Michael Durian.